Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and this is my original Dreamcast that I've had for years, and it is up and running again. Was so glad to actually have this back. The Dreamcast is actually a console that I play a lot. Like I play the Dreamcast for a considerable amount of time throughout the year, just because it is home to some of my favorite action games, also home to some of my favorite shoot 'em up games, including one of my top five shoot 'em ups of all time, and that is Mars Matrix. If you've never heard of Mars Matrix and you're a fan of the shoot 'em up genre, I highly recommend you try this game out. Um, it's the thing about Mars Matrix that I like, it has a different type of mechanic. You don't get bombs like how in some shoot 'em ups, you get that the screen clearing bomb attack. In Mars Matrix, it's a little different. You get like this. It's basically a move that absorbs all of the bullets on the screen. You get to absorb them. It takes about 3 to 5 seconds to absorb all of the bullets, and while you're in the state of absorbing bullets, you become almost invincible. And there's like this sphere that spins around you that also does damage to the enemy. And then once it reaches like the maximum amount of bullets that you can take in, it unleashes them in an equally large force. So if there's a ton of bullets on the screen and you absorb all those bullets, you're gonna deal all that damage back to the enemy, and then some. So it's one of those moves that you actually have to time right, and that's only gonna come as you play the game and learn the levels and know at which point in the levels there's gonna be a lot of bullets on the screen. So I think that Mars Matrix has a very interesting mechanic in that way. It kind of does remind me of Ikaruga in that way. Ikaruga has a similar mechanic. The only difference is I think that mechanic is color based. So, if your ship is flipped to the blue side while blue bullets are coming at you, you can absorb those. If they're red bullets, you have to be flipped to the red side, I think. So, very similar mechanic. I just think Mars Matrix does a good job of executing just the gameplay. I think the levels are brutal for sure. This game is very unforgiving. The music is very, frenetic and like heart pumping. It's almost like that Matrix, like the music you would have seen like in the movie The Matrix. It's that like early 2000s kind of like techno electric sound. It's like super cool. But anyway, I'm gushing over this game. I've gushed over it enough. The Dreamcast is, like I said, it's one of my favorite consoles. I find a game to play on this, and I'll just start playing that game for weeks and weeks. I remember when I got on my Grandia 2 kick, I started playing Grandia 2, and I don't like again. I'm not even the biggest RPG guy, but I played Grandia to the end. I put in a lot of time in this game, to the point where I wound up beating it. And once I beat it, I sold it. I was like, I don't need it anymore. I already beat it. I don't need to keep the game. But then I saw it and I was like, no, I want to get this back. I might want to play through this again. I just like Dreamcast RPGs. I don't know why. Grandia, Evolution, Evolution 2, Skies of Arcadia. I mean, they're all pretty cool. So, um, but what do I think is going to happen when it comes to like these types of consoles and these types of games in 2025? Will these consoles and will these types of games become obsolete to the casual gamer market? And I don't know. I don't know. I was in a retro game store over the weekend, and while I was there, shockingly enough, I saw a kid. To me, it's a kid, but he looked like he couldn't have been older than maybe 19, maybe 20, 21. But he's a young kid, and he was in the retro game store buying original PlayStation 2 games. And he was actually buying like some of the first Call of Duty games. He was buying like, games that I just would never think that like, someone would go to a retro game store and buy. And I hear all the time retro game store owners say, how the top tier games, the really expensive games, the rare ones, the highly sought after games, they often say that those aren't the games that keep them in business. They say it's like the Kingdom Hearts, it's the Call of Duties, it's the you know, the Jack and Daxters, it's the Crash Bandicoots. It's the very, very common games that keep them in business. And I was shocked, just at the stack of games that this kid had in his hand, because, you know, it's not to say that they weren't good games, but I just didn't think that anyone of his age would be out on a Saturday night, you know, trying to buy like old school PlayStation 2 games. And so, you know, every time I hear someone say, you know, the future generation isn't going to care about these games, no one's going to care, they don't want to play these games, I don't know. I battle with that thought process, because I think, I don't know. I think if a game is good, there's going to be someone who wants to play it. There's going to be someone who wants to try it. And no matter how far removed you are from that generation, there's always going to be a desire to try those games out. And I think I don't think that most 21-year-olds are probably going to a game store to buy PlayStation 2 games. I doubt that. Most 21-year-olds are going to GameStop and they're buying like the latest Call of Duty for the PlayStation 5 or for their Xbox, you know, series or whatever the case may be. So that's not I'm not saying that that's a common thing, but I'm wondering, you know, my question is this generation, Dreamcast, retro games like this, are is the general public done with these games? I think it's definitely a good question to ask. um and you know, in some ways it's good, and in some ways it's bad. It's good, I think, in that if less people are seeking these games, it should mean that there's more to go around in the market, and hopefully that means prices go down and it makes it easier for collectors to add to their collection. But at the same time, you still want to see that enthusiasm, from the retro gaming community. You definitely want to continue to see that appreciation for older games and older titles. So I think it's a very interesting thought. It's a very interesting proposition. I know me personally, I very much play a lot of the, you know, older games, older systems. They bring me a lot of joy, and like I said, a lot of these games you're not seeing ported to modern consoles. There's still a ton of retro games that have not seen a re-release, a port to any new consoles. There's so many, and I mean, I could probably make a video just on that alone, on games that have not seen a re-release that need one. And I think it's things like that that are going to keep a lot of these consoles alive. Um, Eventually, will a lot of these games get a release on a modern console? Probably. And can you emulate a lot of these games? For sure. But in terms of like a licensed re-release of a lot of these games, we haven't seen that, and I don't know if we're gonna see that for some time. So I'm interested to know your thoughts. You know, will the general public be done with retro in 2025, or do you think there's still more room to run? And just to kind of give you some context, when I refer to the general public, like, are they done? I'm talking, will do you think the 2020 level of interest that we saw in retro games, right? Because in 2020, we saw more interest in retro games by non-traditional gamers, or not game, you know, people that aren't, you know, truly from the gaming community. We saw more general public interest in retro games than we had in a long time. So are we going to continue to see that in 2025, or do you think that's going to drop? I'm interested to know your thoughts. Let me know down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. So Y2K Collector, take it easy.